no one is above the law. The people have had enough. We will root out the criminals and expose them all. We're fighting to expose the criminal element in Texas. Our investigation in the Brazoria County's justice system has just begun.
And now your host, Kevin Henry.
Over the last few decades, the people of Brazoria County have been slowly indoctrinated into going along with the morally bankrupt selected politicians and their hidden agendas. These people have normalized repetitive, massive school bonds full of waste, fraud, and abuse so they can pad their pockets and leave future generations with the bill. Illegal and insanely high property evaluations from the county appraisal district leading to unbearable and unsustainable property taxes as a direct indicator of this fraudulent activity. Illegal, rigged, and unregulated game rooms leading to the theft of our elderly citizens' retirement savings, one home at a time. Not to mention drugs, prostitution, and skyrocketing crime rates ushered in by this organized crime ring. Smoke shops on just about every corner of our county pumping massive amounts of mind-altering, but somehow legal drugs into the hands of our most vulnerable, our children and grandchildren, while destroying their drive, passion, and motivation for a greater future. On this episode, Edmund Baker Jr. sits down with me and discusses what happens when someone with good intentions that is not morally bankrupt runs for an office and how the swamp tries to destroy you. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to our channel. It really does help us get to the top of the charts. And please share this episode with your friends and family. And welcome back to part 2 with Edmund Baker Jr. Thank you for being on with us here today. Edmund, you ran for city judge in Clute against Randy Smith a few times, and the system went after you and tried to destroy you. Can you explain to us what made you want to run for city judge and how that went?
Initially, on part 1, I kind of went down the timeline, up until when I was on the grand jury. But after the grand jury in 2011, I was a part of the Brazoria County Grievance Committee. And Sharon Reynolds, she was the treasurer at the time for Brazoria County, and she had a grievance, and I was a part of that. And I got to see that process. But also in 2013 was the last time that I played for a countywide event, and that was the National Day of Prayer. And it was across the street at the church across from the courthouse before they tore it down. When I went over there, they had me on the program and everything, playing as usual, so it wasn't nothing out of the ordinary that I was a part of that, the political events, National Day of Prayer and all that. But I said all that to say this, because the very next year, 2014, I had put my name in the hat for Clute City Council at first. That was my initial thing, try to, get my feet in the door first, so that was like on a whim. But then after I didn't get that, I remember the Facts interviewer, she was asking me, was I considering running for, city council again? And I was like, no, I think I've seen, in the community, I think I see where I can be a more positive influence in the community.
Right.
She was like, what is that? I'm thinking about running for Clute Municipal Court Judge. And so that's where all that happened in 2014 when I announced about running for Clute Municipal Court Judge. And that's when the attacks started.
What did you notice first, the attacks online?
The first thing they did was with my son. When they went after my son, Darian, they arrested him in class. He was in class taking a test.
And this was right after you announced that you were going to run for city judge?
You can go back to Facebook. Like when I made the public announcement, it was like almost immediately after I made that announcement, my son ended up in juvie being accused of sending terrorist threat text messages to students saying he was going to kill them. And it was false.
So you've proven all this was false, but you've also proven this is what happens when you go against the system and you run against somebody that's powerful in office and they don't want you in there.
Yep.
So they literally went to Brazoswood High School and arrested your son on false accusations and put him in juvenile. How long did he have to stay in juvenile for?
He was in there off and on a total of a whole month, like 30 days, because they kept, it's a 10-day limit based on the law. And so they would keep him in there as long as they could before they would have to have another hearing. And then at the other hearing, it was all kangaroo court again, and he'll send him back and stuff.
Where was the court at? What court system?
Oh, it was a Brazoria County courthouse in Angleton.
Brazoria County.
Yeah.
They had him in jail for a month. And do you feel like that was directly related to you running for office?
It was totally related. We came to find out that it was Randy Smith's niece. It was his niece's daughter, his great niece, was the one that accused him of it.
So the judge that you said you're going to run against, it was their family member that made that false accusation about your son that got him put in jail.
Yeah.
What happened to her whenever this was proven false?
Nothing.
Nothing at all?
No, nothing happened. And the thing of it is it went on for so long. It drug on for like 5 months. And with it was all false from the beginning, but they flipped it around where we had to prove his innocence versus being innocent to proving guilty. It's like he was already guilty, and now we got to fight to prove his innocence. They picked him up twice from B-Wood. The first time they picked him up, that was on Valentine's Day. It was February the 14th.
So they were publicly trying to shame him to get to you.
Yeah.
To intimidate you to back off that race.
Yep. And I know that they were targeting him on purpose, because I looked at the, after all of this was over, I was able to go back and do my own, researching and stuff, and come to find out that the accusations was made at Randy Smith's house. Her mom was a part of it, not just her. She was young. So the mom was a part of the accusation too, like getting the story to sound juicy.
How old was your son at this time?
He was still a minor. He was, 15, I think? Yeah.
And they're going and arrested him from B-Wood.
Yeah.
Perp walking him out of the school in front of his peers.
Yep. Handcuffs and everything. And he's not even knowing what in the world is going on. And I remember one of the officers at the school telling them, like, y'all got the wrong guy. He's one of the good guys. He's, everybody knew my son, and he was excellent, student grades and academics and, just everything. He was in band and choir. Everybody just knew him, and.
So your son's never been a troublemaker.
Never.
Never been in trouble with the school, the principal, none of that. And then they perp walk him in front of it just because you run for office. How did that make him feel? Did it take him a while to get over that?
He still deals with that till this day.
Does he?
To this day. That was so humiliating to him, and he had to, internalize that, because it wasn't just the students, it was teachers too, because he was being accused of something that was totally false.
Terroristic threats. That's major crimes.
Yeah. And saying he was going to kill students. But when you read the articles and stuff, and like the police report, because they made police reports, they did all that. All of that is public information. The police report said he did it outside of school. The BISD police, they're not involved. It's the CLUT police, because he supposedly did it off campus, but they went and got him from campus.
Wow.
In arrest.
Did that affect his record? I know you said he had went to the Army, right?
Yeah, he went to the Army, and that came back up when he went to the Army. We were able to get it squashed, like, permanently, but it was
expunged.
Yeah, it was supposed to already be expunged, but it didn't happen, and like I say, he was a minor, and when they took him to jail, I wasn't even notified. I didn't even know. I didn't know they went to get him. I didn't know anything.
When did you find out that he had been arrested? How did you find out?
Ironically, when Matt Sebesta was running for county judge, I was at his event. They were doing the report during that same time. Like when I was at that event.
Playing sax at Matt Sebesta's event?
Yeah. I was at that event, and they were setting up my son at the same time.
The same people.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, when you it's unbelievable because that's the thing, the beauty of paper trails, they actually did a report. And when you read that report, it's unbelievable because it tells all the details and you can see how they were just setting them up and they didn't have any proof whatsoever. It was just all word of mouth, just hearsay.
That's infuriating because we need people like you to run for office. We need people to step outside and say, I'm here to help. I want to do this for the right reasons and not for political power and clout. And then they go throw your son in jail.
Yep.
So what happens after this? You decided to run again, didn't you?
Because that was 2014 when I announced it, but I didn't run until 2015. And that's when they got me. That's when they attacked me the first time. I was put in jail on the first day of early voting.
They arrested you too?
Yeah, in 2015, when I was actually in the middle of my campaign. Yeah, 2015, they arrested me. And they said initially on the front page of the Facts newspaper, they said it was failure to pay child support. And it was false. It was all false.
Of course, the Facts News comes in and does the wrap-up smear. I mean, we're both pretty knowledgeable to that, right?
Yep.
We know how the Facts newspaper works.
Yep.
They said that it was failure to pay child support. They arrested you
First day of early voting.
while you're out trying to work the parking lots and get the voters to come in and vote for you. How did that go down?
No, they set me up I had to go to the courthouse. I was at the courthouse in Angleton when they arrested me. And Judge Hufsteller, he was the one. He's the one that signed my CASA paper when I swore in as a CASA volunteer, and he was the one that was involved when I went to jail on the first day of early voting in 2015, and I was in jail for 15 days.
15 days.
Throughout the whole election process.
Oh, the early vote. Oh, the whole entire election, even on election day.
Even on election day, I was still in jail.
So, what happened in that election?
It definitely affected the outcome. But what is so funny now? It was not funny back then because I'm sitting in jail and I had to file with the 14th Court of Appeals and I had to file with the Texas Attorney General to even get out of jail.
So a writ.
They just had a writ of habeas corpus. They had me in jail with no bond.
No bond at all for some child support, trumped up child support charges.
Trumped up child support charges. But that was what they put in the facts. But what they put on the legal papers was like insubordinate, like disobedient. That's what it says on the actual official papers. It doesn't say the child support on those because they know it was false. But that's what they put in the facts on the front page.
Right.
And so I was in jail, and they had me in there with no bond. And so when I did that writ, the Texas Attorney General and the 14th Court of Appeals was on my side, and they say I was being detained illegally. That's what it says on the papers.
So they both sided with you, and then you got out of jail after they said that you were illegally held.
Yeah, and they still kept me in there another seven days, I believe. After that was already, they said they demanded my release, and they still kept me in there another week.
Had you had any legal problems before this?
Nope.
Just you decided to run for city judge, and now all of a sudden you have all the legal problems you can shake a stick at. What happened from that point?
After I got out of jail, I went straight to the Facts newspaper after they told me, people had told me, what they saw in the facts and stuff. The whole time I was in jail, I didn't get to say anything to defend myself, but it's 11,000 people in Clute, and he only received like 250 some votes. And after doing all of that, and I think I got like 25 in jail.
In jail?
Yeah.
Even after the wrap-up smear by the fake newspaper?
Even after all of that, I got 25 votes sitting in jail the entire time, and he only got 250 some votes. But the kicker was they put an article in the paper afterwards saying that I got out and everything, and talked about the Attorney General in the 14th Court of Appeals. But then at the bottom they said Randy, he got 90% of the votes. Tried to make it look like he was the people's choice. They
undisputed champion of the world.
Yeah, they tried to make it like real big, and I got defeated. He defeated me and stuff.
This is the same judge that his wife chased a high school student down the road and went back to Clute PD and filed charges on him for saying that he cussed her, but she's the one that chased him down the road for quote unquote running a stop sign. Wow. So I guess it runs in the family. They feel like they're above the law to where they can go after you by false accusations through a family member to get your son put in jail. Go after you. I don't know how they went after you for these trumped up child support charges, but
because it was like they just made up something. That's what I'm saying. People don't understand. They think it has to be something, but I don't even know where they come up with some of this stuff. They just make it up out of thin air and they run with it, and they have the paper to back them up.
None of it's valid.
None of it is valid. Well, 2017, I ran again, and they did it to me again.
What happened in 2017?
Like the end of 2016.
So you didn't get enough from the first two go-rounds. You went back for a third round. I like it.
So they were really going to make an example out of me this time, and that's what they did. Because in 2016, like around Thanksgiving, it was an accusation from my daughter's mom about harassment, which it was still false, but that doesn't matter. The bottom line is she went to the police and she had accused me of harassing her. Well, that was in November of 2016, where almost the end of December of 2016, me and my daughters and my son, Darian, we had come back from an event. I was playing for a big mega church in Denver, Colorado, and we were gone for almost a week. And so we came back, and the girl's mom wanted them, so I took them to their mom and dropped them off. And as soon as I dropped them off, Lake Jackson PD just came swarming from everywhere, like I'm El Chapo or some a big drug dealer. I'm like, what's going on? And they come up to me. Mr. Baker, we have a warrant for your arrest. I say, for what? I say, me and my kids just came back from Colorado. We've been in Colorado for a week. And they wouldn't tell me what it was about. But once I got put in jail, because my son recorded it, and I think he got like 25,000 views in one day on YouTube or something. But he recorded them taking me in and stuff. And then they mistreated him because he was still underage. And they made him walk. They towed my car, made him walk like, we lived in Clute and we were in Lake Jackson, and he had to walk back home. They refused to even, help him or give him a ride or whatever. But that's why I know they were targeting me, because they were very rude, very mean, and I'm like, even if I did whatever they were accusing me of, I'm not giving them any issues. I'm not giving them any problems. So why are they being so harsh and rude, And so when I went to jail, I found out, that it was from that in November when she was saying I was harassing her at HEB. And so I'm like, are you serious? So make a long story short, that was pending to go to court. It was still going, 17 came around. And so I'm running now. I'm in the middle of my campaign again. This harassment was a misdemeanor. That's like a parking ticket, so they knew that couldn't do anything. Bottom line is when they picked me up for that, I was out on bond, And
so they were holding on to this, waiting for you to run for office again.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened, because as soon as I started running again, they scheduled a court date in May. So it was clouding up the water, for my campaign. So I had, and it's public record, so I could tell who it was. It was Justin Gilbert. He's the judge, one of the judges, him and his wife, Courtney, at the courthouse.
One of the same judges that swept the jury tampering under the rug.
Well, Justin was my lawyer at that time. And if you go on the Brazoria County website and pull up my case, you'll see his name redacted. So it's not like I'm saying something that can't be proven or whatever, but he was my attorney, and I just asked him if he could get that, postponed a little bit. until the election was over, you know. And so he was like, okay, let's see what I can do. And so he said he got it pushed back to October. So I'm thinking, okay, everything's cool. Well, I didn't win that year, but like the damage was already done. But I just ran to show them that
Did the Fax News sweep in and do a story on it?
In 2017, when they did that, that was a huge thing too. It went from harassment to stalking. The same accusation, they turned it into stalking. So now it went from a $1,500 bond misdemeanor to $30,000.
Escalated it.
$30,000 felony now, third-degree felony. But June the 1st, I got arrested. I was coming to pick my daughters up from their moms, and she's a part of it. I can't help it. It's just the facts. Because I went to go pick up my daughters, and I was running late for an event because my kids, they used to go with me to my events and stuff a lot of times. You know, I have family-friendly events and stuff. And so I was texting like, hey, I got to go. I'm running late. And she was like, she's doing their hair. Okay, they'll be out in just a minute. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm sitting there in my car. And me and my son, Darian, he was in there with me again. Then all of a sudden, here comes Lake Jackson PD again. And at this time, man, it's like, I'm just numb.
So she set you up?
Yeah, I'm just numb at this time. It's like the first time, now this time, but I didn't know about it being enhanced to a stalking of felony. So,
well, the thing is they wanted to put a felony on you so you can't run for office again.
Exactly. And I didn't know all that at the time, but that's exactly what it was all about. Because as soon as they came to get me, because I put a little crack in my window, like, yes, officer. And then he's like, Mr. Baker, we have a warrant for your arrest. And going back to the grand jury thing, he said the grand jury indicted you on a felony stalking. And I say, I know, because this is on video too. I say, I know how the process works. It doesn't work that fast like that. And I say, how did the grand jury indict me on a stalking? I say, for what? And he wouldn't give me the information, but he picked me up, and my son had his license by the end, and so he drove the car off this time, and so they didn't impound it, but they took me straight to county, Lake Jackson. Instead of taking me to Lake Jackson jail, they took me straight to county, and I'm like, that's weird. And so I went there and got booked in, and people don't even understand, you know, like, God built me for it, but man, they try to break you. This was to break me. This was to humiliate me. This was to make me put my tail between my legs and hide my head in shame.
And swear you'll never run for office again.
Yeah, that's what it was all about. And it just made me madder, you know, because I'm like, man, how dare they, you know, because I know everybody knows me in the community from playing the saxophone and trying to label me a stalker is like, it's laughable, you know, and so, but still, they did it. And so when I went to jail that time, I was in jail that Friday. When they booked me in, I went to see the judge, the JP for Angleton. I forget his name. I think Davis. Or whatever. Yeah, well, I went to see him, and he said, you know, how do I plead? I say, not guilty, like that. And he tried to get me to sign those papers for the stalking. I said, I'm not signing those, like that. And then he said, well, what do you mean? I said, no, I'm not signing those papers. I say, and he say, well, if you can't trust the judge, who can you trust, like that? I say, I'm not signing those papers. I say, if I sign those papers for the stalking, then the misdemeanor, the harassment gonna disappear, like that. And so he basically, the deputy, sheriff deputy, or the jailer, he escorted me out. I said, I need to make my phone call. And then he say, well, you don't get to make a phone call. You didn't sign our paper.
Are you serious?
That's what the jailer said. He say, you don't get a phone call. You didn't sign our paper. And I say, what? And so he took me back, and I had to end up later on using one of the paid ones up in the jail cell to call my son.
Right.
And I asked him to go get to call Justin Gilbert and tell Justin what happened. And I called him back later on. By the time I figured he talked to Justin, and I said, what did Justin say? He said for me to tell you to call him when you get out.
Edmund, hold that thought. We need to get a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, I want to talk about what happened after you got out of jail.
Okay.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Need a barn built to last? At Stuckey Barnes in Brazoria County, Texas, we blend quality craftsmanship with rugged durability and Texas pride to make your dream barn real. From custom barns to metal buildings, we build strong, local, and backed by hometown service. Need bold, high-quality ink? Seven Souls Tattoo Studio has you covered. We're obsessively clean and professional, guiding you from idea to unforgettable art. Got old ink? We'll transform it into stunning new work with precision and creativity. Drop by Seven Souls at 20 Circle Way in Lake Jackson, Texas. Boat season's here. Is your ride ready? At Liquid Rides in Brazoria, we handle certified marine repairs and full engine builds. We're your Mercury Marine and PCM dealer, keeping you smooth all year. Plus, custom stereo installs for boats, vehicles, side-by-sides, and Jeeps. Liquid Rides, custom audio, certified performance, built in Texas. Looking for real coverage from real people? Whether it's your home, car, or business, go see Landra Olson's team at Farmers Insurance in West Columbia, Texas, where hometown service meets top-rated protection. Spring's here, and it's time to get those flower beds and gardens in shape. Rifles Feed and Supply in Brazoria has soil, mulch, and everything you need to make your yard pop, plus the best feed and supplies for your animals. Fentanyl is taking our loved ones' lives every day, but knowledge can save them. Travis's Voice is dedicated to raising awareness, educating communities, and preventing future tragedy. To learn more, go to travis'svoice.org.
And now, back to the Kevin Henry Podcast.
And we're back with Edmund Baker Jr. Edmund, tell us about when you were released from jail.
When I got out that Monday, and I went straight to his office because my son had told me what he said. So I went straight to his office, and I'm like, Justin, I say, you're my attorney. I say, why did I need to come see you after I got out of jail? I say, isn't that something you were supposed to be arranging for me to get me out? And before I can even say, any much after that, he told me he was withdrawing.
He recused.
He wanted to withdraw off the case. He couldn't represent me anymore.
Oh, because you're a political hot potato now, and he's a politician. He was going for political power, I guess.
So once he withdrew, we had to go through all the formalities, and we went to Jeremy Warren and stood in front of Jeremy Warren, Judge Warren, and so he withdrew from the case, and so it left me, fending for myself, which was their goal, their objective anyway. But it's still, I still hadn't ever gone to court, for the supposedly harassment. So now this is stalking. Okay, so now let's just do away. We're not even concerned about this stalking, this harassment anymore. Let's focus.
They're going
on
after the felonies.
Yeah. So fast forward. 20 times the case got reset. Like from 2017 to 2019, we didn't have one hearing. All it was, every time they would get me to come in, they would say it's pre-trial hearing, but I would go to it and they'll reset it. And I go to it again, the DA reset it. Go to it. And so they were just trying to wear me down. If I wasn't self-employed, I would have lost my job. They were trying to wear me out, And so every time they said to come, I had to come, or they would have found me in contempt of court. They were trying to get me for 2 years, and I kept coming, and it got reset like 20 times because they knew
they didn't have the evidence.
Exactly, they knew they didn't have anything.
It was more trumped up charges like they did to you before and like they did to your son.
Yeah, and so within that span of 2 years, I was running again in 2019.
I like your tenacity.
And so in 2019, I ran again. And so after the election was over, I didn't win again. The damage was already done. But like I say, I wasn't even running for whatever anymore. I was running because I knew if I got elected, I would be a positive, influence in the community, and I knew I would do a good job in that position. Because when Randy was there, I mean, he didn't have any qualifications or credentials. He was just a handyman, that got handed the position, and he learned on the fly. But I'm an actual certified Texas mediator and everything. That's what a judge is supposed to be, a mediator.
Right.
Hearing both sides and then, drawing the conclusion based on the law and the facts and stuff. But
the same thing you wanted to do in the grand jury.
Exactly. And so I'm like, that's why I ran, but each time they attacked me. And so in 2019, after everything was over, election was over, and I didn't get elected, it's like they couldn't take it. Once I crossed that invisible line, it was like, that was it.
Yeah.
So they were going to get me, and that was in August, right before school was starting, August 2019, because I have primary custody of, they're not kids anymore, but I had primary custody of my children. And so
you had primary custody the whole time?
Yeah, the whole time. Even going through all of this, I had primary custody. My children was dealing with all this too, Right. But I had to stay strong. Once we finally went to trial in August 2019, and everything was set up. Everything was kangaroo court, man. I mean, from the selection of the jury to everything. They even gave me like this. They call him some kind of attorney, like he was just supposed to be there.
Court appointed?
No, because I didn't have any representation.
You were pro se?
Yeah, they called it something else because they wanted to make sure I stayed in line.
Oh.
So they just attached this guy to me and said, if I had any question or whatever. But I found out later that they were giving him stuff that I was supposed to have because I was pro se. Mm-hmm. And so they give it to him and sign off on it saying I got it, and I never saw it.
And for our audience that doesn't know what pro se is, it means you're representing yourself.
Yeah. And so through all of that, it was a whole week trial. And I represented myself, and I didn't even have any discovery. And the DA refused to give me anything because they knew they didn't have nothing anyway. But if I had a lawyer, they would give him the discovery. Like, how do you know how to prepare your defense if you don't have anything?
So they were bulldozing over you.
Yeah, they didn't give me anything. And I still lasted a whole week going against all of them lying on me and false accusations. And they had the Lake Jackson PD in there giving testimony. They had they had all of their key witnesses supposedly for stuff. And it's like everything they were saying was just irrelevant. It was nothing criminal. Nothing they ever said. They were talking about like 3,000 text messages over those years that we were waiting to go to court, and nothing was violent, nothing was sexual.
So they're saying you're harassing, your stalking charges are based off of text messages?
Text messages.
You can't make this stuff up. So your stalking charges are off of
text messages.
And there's nothing incriminating in the text messages at all.
Not one.
And you share children with this woman, so you're going to text back and forth.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah. And so I'm telling you, it was nothing. I have the transcripts. You're not going to find one thing in there that lines up with 42072, and that's stalking. But they have 4207. Even if you look at the documents, my actual charge, the jury charge, has 4207, which is still harassment. It's not stalking.
You are guilty, though, Edmund. You're guilty because you ran for city judge and Clute against Randy Smith. So there's that.
Yeah.
It is admirable that you kept on with it and you kept on running, and you're like, I'm not going away.
And they put that on the front page when I got convicted of the stalking in August of 2019. They plastered that on the front page of the paper. And
of course they did.
And they didn't say, my name. They said, man convicted of stalking. It's to make it sound, man convicted of stalking. And guess what else they had in there? Ex-judge candidate.
Oh, yeah, they wanted to smear you on that. And who's to say you actually lost the election? Because in Brazoria County, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. I mean, we got the Republican Party chair running the ballots down the highway himself with his hands all over the ballots.
Yep.
So there's no real rule of law when it comes to election code here.
That makes
either.
a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
You probably had the whole town vote.
I
for
never
you.
know. I'll never know.
Yeah, well, we'll find out soon. But so your tenacity is admirable. I mean, for you to stand in that fight and continue to run against this, man. Edmund, about the Facts fiction newspaper, we both know that they're a propaganda arm of the local government. They put out whatever they're told to put out. What else did you notice with them?
Well, I knew in an instant that the Facts were a part of this. From the time they arrested my son the first time until after, they did that to me. So from 2014 to 2019, it was like they just wanted us to be in a bad light because I was running for Clute Municipal Court judge. So it was like they couldn't put anything positive in the paper about me or my family because they were trying to ruin my reputation and smear campaign and all that and character assassinate. Well, during that time, my son in 2016, he won Homecoming King at Bewood, and they didn't put him. They put the Queen in the paper.
Oh, they didn't put him,
but they didn't put the King.
Wow.
And it was so obvious till people said something about it. And then the next day, you saw a little piece in the newspaper, in the Sunday paper, with him and the Queen together.
Wow.
And so they deliberately left him out. Like, how can you mention the Queen but not the King? But he was my son.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah. And then my oldest daughter, Passion, she graduated just a couple years ago. And she won Homecoming Queen at Bewood, and they didn't put her in the paper. Didn't not one mention, but I didn't even catch it, and apparently other people didn't catch it. But I went back later, and because I wanted to make sure I got a paper trail, and I emailed the editor, and I asked them, I say, can you go back and find my daughter Passion when she won the Homecoming Queen, because trying to get a little collage together, to celebrate her for graduation. Mr. Baker, he took like 3 days. I'm sorry, we can't find anything. And that just was proof. I already knew, but that was just proof that they didn't put Darian, when he got Homecoming King, they tried to leave him out, but they ended up putting him in. But then my other daughter got Homecoming Queen, just left her out of the Facts, the fiction.
It sounds like you've raised some excellent children.
Man.
And the Facts ought to be ashamed of themselves. What a rag that newspaper is. I can't believe people still buy that newspaper, but I don't see it lasting too much longer, especially at this rate.
Yeah, and they went after me. The Facts, called the police, called Clute PD on me.
The Facts newspaper called the police on you?
Yeah, I'm trying to give them money now, $600 to run an ad for my daughter since they didn't put her in the paper.
Right.
So I was going to put an ad.
Proud moment.
Yeah, with her accomplishments about Homecoming Queen and track and just other accomplishments. So I was just making a good little collage. And next thing I know, they tell me that I can't put the ad in the paper. I say, why? And I'm there, physically there. And I say, why can't I put the ad in the paper? I say, I'm paying for it. And then they was like, it goes against copyright laws. I say, what? I say, one of the pictures that y'all already had in there, I'm using one of those pictures. So what are you saying? And so I had my own pictures, and then there was one picture that they had put in the Facts previously that I was going to use, and they said copyright law. I say, it's your paper. I say, what are you talking about? But I say, you know what? I say, this paper is not supposed to be a political paper. I say, I know why y'all don't want me to put this ad in the paper. That's because it's making my family look good. That's what I said. And I said, I know y'all in on all, so I just let them know. Next thing I know, I left out at the time with my $600 in my hand. They told me I couldn't run the ad. And so I went to my car, and Clute PD flying down the road.
Another swarm.
And they called Clute police on me And I didn't even do anything. But whatever they told Clute, it was something. They lied.
And that building's got to have cameras all over it.
Yeah, they had to say I'm causing a scene, I'm being disruptive, whatever they said.
Disorderly conduct.
Yeah, but I was gone in my car, and they came and parked behind my car, so I couldn't get out, and we were right there at the facts.
And in that case, you'd have to go talk to Judge Randy Smith, right?
Yeah, and I got all the evidence to prove. When I got home, I had an email telling me I can come back and run the ad.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so they cleared that all up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a mistake, Mr. Baker.
Yeah.
I say call to action, boycott the Facts newspaper. The Facts, that whole newspaper should be defunded. Absolutely trash.
Yeah,
they go after
Yvonne Mitz.
Yeah, Yvonne Mitz. Yeah.
She was the one I was talking to.
We had a mariachi party whenever she was having an event at the Civic Center. It was a good time.
It was to get people to understand that not everybody has to like us. I came to grips with that many, many years ago.
Not me.
What's next for you?
I told all of the big shots, you know, in Brazoria County, because I know them all, man. I mean, I can show picture after picture, you know, of events I played for where all of the, you know, the people who they consider the good old boys, you know, all of the what they call the powerful men and women, you know.
Well, those people, they're selected. They're not elected.
Exactly.
They're installed like a toilet.
Yeah, and what I've noticed too is they'll resign or retire in the, you know, during their term so they can pick somebody to get there.
They'll step down early.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
They do that all
They
the
step
time.
down early. Somebody gets appointed, and then it's hard to beat the incumbent.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but do you have aspirations to run again?
Man, I mean, it was like initially when I first did it, you know, I mean, I did it with good intentions. I did it, you know, because I knew I could make a positive difference in the community. But it's like, I mean, I didn't need, excuse me, all of the extra that came with it. If it's that important to them, you know, to keep those positions, you know, hey, you have it, you know. But they do that. They make examples out of people like me and you and, you know, very few others, and not many, but like people that actually have the tenacity and the courage and the boldness to do it. It shouldn't even be that, because if you're, you know, an American, you know, I live in Brazoria County. I live in the city of Clute. So, I mean, I can run for whatever I want to, you know, but they don't see it like that. It's like, we didn't pick you, so you bucking against us. But that's the way they saw it, but I didn't see it like that. And so after all of this process now, you know, I'm like, man, I say it's not worth it, because it's not like I wouldn't, but it's like the people, the community has to rally, you know, together.
Yeah.
They have to understand how important it is to put somebody like us, you know, in office.
Somebody that's going to go side and listen to all the facts and everything, and going to do what's best for the people and not what's best for the party or what's best for the powers that be.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's like, what's the point of running if the people are not going to back you? But if they back you and they understand you're going to get smeared, they're going to lie on you, they're going to put stuff in the paper about you, you know, that's just part of it.
You're going to get indicted with that grand jury that you've already exposed.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, what happened with that? You got indicted. What happened after that?
Well, with the conviction? Like with the stalking?
With
conviction?
the stalking charges.
Oh, yeah, because like once I got convicted, they arrested me right there in the courthouse. And it was no reason. They just had to humiliate me again. And I'm in a suit and everything. And I'm telling you, man, the bailiff, he didn't even want to. You could see it on his face. They were watching me the whole week. They see there's no way I'm guilty, but everything was handpicked. Remember the jury, you know, they had the jury tampering situation. All of that was around that time.
Yeah. Tracy Reed blew the whistle on the jury tampering. There was a 177-page Ranger report. People stepped down, and I believe somebody was fired because of it. Now that person's back in office again, or back in the court system again somewhere. I don't know where she went to work. Mm-hmm. But it was proven that they were not doing jury selection process the right way. It was proven, it was in the Rangers report, and it all got swept under the rug. Can you imagine the implications of however many years that was of them running that jury selection process the way they were doing it, and how many people could file lawsuits on the county, and how many cases they would have to reopen to go back and see if that person was guilty or not?
Yep.
That's what needs to happen. I don't know how it can happen. I don't know how they can go back and rerun that many cases, but that needs to happen to have a rule of law in Brazoria County. There should be high-ranking officials in Brazoria County arrested and perp walked just like you and your son were for what they did to you.
Yep.
What do you think they did to get your wife to cooperate, your ex-wife to cooperate with all this?
Just to be honest, I believe they paid her. I really do. I believe they paid her. She went from working at the fitness place, making $10 an hour, to owning her own boutique over there by Table 24 in the ritzy part of Lake Jackson.
She was making a little over minimum wage, $12 an hour, training?
Yeah, doing training.
And then went to having her own shop.
Yeah, all around that same time.
Does she have that kind of savings? Did you have to pay her a certain amount of money? Like, where does she come up with that money to be able? You have to start a business. It's pretty expensive.
Exactly. It just looked too suspicious. I put it like that because it all happened around the same time. You go from training at the gym in the mall, making $10, $12 an hour, to owning your own boutique, and you're the sole income, and you got to have small, medium, large, extra large. You got to have all these different outfits, hats and glasses and purses and shoes.
Oh, she had a room full of swag,
jewelry and watches and where the location, it was right there by Table 24 in the heart of Lake Jackson.
So it wasn't, she didn't open her own gym. She opened a shop.
Opened up it was something totally different.
Wow.
That she never even talked about anything like that. But I'm just saying, I'm just being honest. All I can say is whatever they did, it persuaded her enough to turn on me, because she was, she didn't even consider that I'm her daughter's dad.
And to the point where you were going to her house to pick up the kids, to go to an event that you were getting paid to go do, and she was calling the cops on you, and having you set up. And that's in the police reports. It's not like I'm just making up something off the top of my head. That's what they do. They make up stuff. But like everything I say, I can back it up with documents, because it says that in the police report. They're setting me up. Yeah, like I got all of that stuff later, I didn't know about all that at the time, but I got all of that stuff now. So you have all the evidence showing start to finish how you were set up each time.
I was set up each time.
I wish you can go and find out how your son was set up and get all the documents on that. I mean, did you say that?
I do have that.
You have all that?
I do.
Can you give them to us and we can comb through them and see if there's something we can present to our audience?
Oh, sure.
That's insane that you would set up a child that has no problems with the law, no problems in that school, and then literally go arrest him in front of his peers. What, twice?
Yeah, twice.
They arrested him twice.
And the second time they said because he violated a part of the court order, which they said, and they gave like 100 different violations, but one of them they said, which we didn't even know who the person was at the time, he couldn't be within 500 feet of her. And we like, who is it? And so that's what I'm saying. It was just crazy. They went and got him the second time saying he was like in the vicinity of where she was, and he didn't even know who she was.
And do you have proof that these allegations were fabricated at Randy Smith's house?
Yes.
You have all those documents?
I do. I have all of that.
You can't make this stuff up, folks. Like, this is insane.
I have all of that.
So this is the reason why people like me and you decide to run for office, to get rid of these injustices in our community. Mm-hmm. You're obviously a bold leader. I don't care what people think about me. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to scream from the mountaintops that if somebody's corrupt, I don't care if it's somebody in my family, somebody that I work with, one of my coworkers, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call it like I see it. And I'm sure you're the same way. Yeah. That's the kind of leaders we need in these positions, not bought and paid for puppets of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
That I'm extremely excited about your enthusiasm and your tenacity to be able to continue to run for that office that you were going for. And I hope that you don't back off. I hope that you consider to run for something else. What about county judge?
Because everything would, it has to be like I have to complete my term because they were trying to give me 10 years of prison, like TDC, and a $10,000 fine. $10,000 fine and 10 years TDC. There was a maximum of both. Like it could have been 2 years or 10, $1 or 10,000. They gave me 10,000 and 10.
They went for the max. So they
even if I was guilty, first offense, or something over text messages, they gave me the max. That's why I knew it was a hand-picked jury,
But child molesters and rapists and all these other people get to walk out the back door at the DA's office, and then they're going after you on some fabricated charges, number one, that were elevated to a felony.
Yep.
Basically to prevent you from ever running for office again.
Yep.
Because once you get a felony conviction, you cannot run for office. That's what they wanted. You were going after somebody's job that they did not want you to get.
Yep.
That's all there is to it.
It was politically motivated.
Right. Edmund, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your candidness with us, and I hope to have you back on soon.
Well, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.